What is going on, everyone? This is Matt Man. We are live, and we are going to be talking a little about a debate that just happened on the Standing for Truth channel, and that was between Smokey Saint and Dr. Ken Hovind. And of course, as you would imagine, a lot was talked about. So for my audience sake, I wasn't really going to talk specifically on that all tonight because most of my audience might not have seen the debate. So I'm going to premiere that tomorrow at around 1 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And then after the 2.5 hours, go live again and talk about how the debate went. That way everyone gets a chance to see it, gets a chance to watch it, and then gets a chance to see what we're talking about. But we're not going to just ignore that it didn't happen either here. So I've got LPP and Redefined Living here, and we are going to be talking somewhat about that and about all topics. I've also sent the invite out to some other people, so who knows how long this is going to go. I could really care less, so we just needed something else for the audience tonight, and hope everyone enjoys. So what did you guys think of the debate? Anyone feels free, jump on in.
Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, no, I mean, I caught the second half of it. I was driving home from work, and so I only caught the second half, but I mean, I'm pretty biased. But from the second half, I just don't understand why people are so, I guess, eager to, I don't want to say twist, but it kind of is. I believe that the Bible is really clear. I don't know how you could come to a different conclusion when you read it straight through, that the earth is young, the creation event are literal days, and it just makes sense. And the young earth model, the biblical model, we have a model. The old earthers, they don't have a model, and it's kind of weird because they're trying to, this seems like, appease the secular consensus on one hand. But then when it comes down to it, they also have to deny the secular consent. Well, at least some of them do, right? Because I don't believe that Smokey holds to evolution. So it's kind of a weird place I feel that he's in. And I just don't understand why he's trying to squeeze that deep time in.
His view of it was from two different points. He thinks that young earth creation actually drives people away from Christianity. That's one of his biggest views. He said because when he was a young earth creationist, his views when he would talk to his atheistic friends were that the secular science disagrees with young earth creation, and therefore because it disagrees with it, it's going to pull people away. For example, it's one of the reasons that the Catholic Church just yielded to evolution, basically saying we're not opposed to it at all. That way they don't have to fight with any of their congregation and risk losing any of them to any other argument. They can just say, well, that's fine. It was all allegorical. Don't worry about it. We don't care. And so he views it that way. And also, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, but even so, if he's rejecting evolution, then I don't know that he's really solved that problem. It seems like, and I don't want to say that he's compromised, because I believe that he believes what he believes, right? And like he said, I mean, he's interpreting it a certain way, and I just think that there's a difference between a translation and an interpretation. So I wouldn't really say that we're interpreting a certain way. I think that the Bible is translated, and we just read it with a normal reading.
That's why the part that you missed was in the beginning. He wanted to show that there was no actual consensus that young earth creation was what all of the founding fathers did think, because he showed a list that there were some who believed that it ranged from around 14,000 to 40,000. And it wasn't all of them, of course, but he said that just goes to show that there was no exact age range for scripture, meaning a general reading of the Bible doesn't give a specific date. Therefore, young earth creation doesn't have to be a doctrine.
Well, Even so, right? Even if we were to just grant that, I guess, for the sake of argument, you still get into another problem where that old Earth position. They're still going away, veering away from the consensus on some spots, but then when it comes to other parts of the doctrine, such as the global flood, like they would have to reject that also.
He does
Right.
believe in Adam was created, though. So you're right. It is all over.
But he
a global
is
flood.
adamant. But he is adamantly against the flood.
Yeah, I mean, I think that position would force him to be against the flood. So
he's against a global flood.
Right.
For sure.
Well, it sounds like a lot of these old earthers, which I respect, like Smokey, they recognize the lines of evidence that we oftentimes utilize pertaining to the genetic data that takes us right back to an original first couple, right? They acknowledge that. So from my understanding, Smokey has at least accepted young man, but old earth. But to also hold to a local flood then is kind of inconsistent, because we also have genetic data that suggests this earth has been repopulated by only a few people based on Y chromosome mitochondrial DNA data. So a local flood idea would be inconsistent with everybody today descending from just three couples 4,500 years ago. You know, I don't know how they would get around that, but I think Ken Hovind, I think he nailed it on some of these scientific lines of evidence, just like he did with Dr. Rhodes. And I give respect to Kenny and Smokey. They made for two amazing debates, two of my favorite debates, I think. But I'm a little bit biased, of course. I'm a young Earth creationist. Plus, Kent has always been one of my favorite debaters. I mean, he goes into a debate to debate. I think he's a pro, but I think he nailed it when he discussed the clear decay pattern in the magnetic field that really demonstrates Earth could not be any older than 10,000 years. And because Kent's been doing this for so long, he also pointed out the inconsistency of their rescue device with these reversals that would have had to take place throughout Earth's history to account for the decaying magnetic field. So I think Kent definitely nailed it there. But overall, what a great debate.
Well, what I always find interesting about some of the things like it just reversed polarity and all these different things, right? It was stronger, but now it's not, and it is, and it was. It's like, okay, so pretty much everything about the old Earth, deep time worldview necessitates uniformitarianism. And it's like, so was it always like it is now at the current rate, or is it not?
That's a great
because
point.
If it's not, then your foundational premise of uniformitarianism, like, are you saying you just cherry pick where it applies? Because that seems to be, and I think that same logic applies to like what Kent was talking about in relation to the sun. So it's burning X number of tons per second or per whatever it was, and it's shrinking 5 feet per hour. Now we measure it now. That's exactly what's happening now. You're not disputing that it's happening now. Okay, then when did it not do that? Well, there was a different time. Okay, prove it. And it's like you can't, obviously, right? Like, we're observing things in real time. We're not observing the past of our sun, period. So everything that's being put forth about it to somehow account for the size problem is nothing but conjecture and supposition, period. You cannot prove that it at some point burned at a different rate just because you this is the stages of stars. Like, well, we don't know that how that applies to our star. I mean, you're making your supposition.
Exactly. Great points. They have to go outside their basic presuppositions and assumptions to even argue against the data. And a lot of these evolutionists, I noticed this in the Dr. Rhodes debate last week, where they don't understand what we're saying, because they'll point out, the argument from carbon dating, right? The fact that we find C14 in samples of numerous different things, fossils, coal, whatever, you name it, okay, diamonds, that go back billions of years, millions of years, of course, with dinosaur fossils. So this puts a limit obviously that the earth then cannot be any more than a couple 100,000 years, because in a couple 100,000 years there should be no more C14. And they'll say, well, a couple 100,000 years is older than 6,000 years. It's like, you don't understand the argument. We're pointing out the fact that there's about 100 to 200 indicators that limit the age of the earth, which means you don't have billions of years. Just because the C14 would be gone in a couple 100,000 years, we're just pointing out the fact that these samples, or these dinosaur fossils, or these diamonds, they're not billions of years old because of what we find in them. And here's the thing, the old earth creationists, I don't think they recognize, especially the theistic evolutionists. I mean, people like Sentinel Apologetics, Inspiring Philosophy, Heiser, Walton. I mean, you get people like Rob who talk such a big game, you know, and they say we misrepresent science, but they can't even debunk the science. Dr. Jason Lisle just debated, 6 to 8 months ago, against Hugh Ross. And on the science of distant starlight, I mean, I'm sorry, Dr. Lisle, he really nailed it. I highly recommend that debate just from 6 months ago. I mean, Dr. Lyle's distant starlight model is fantastic. I haven't seen it. I haven't really seen a lot of these lines of evidence that Kent looks to, right? The fact that the moon's getting further away, the fact that the sun is burning up, the fact that the magnetic field is decaying, or short-lived comets, whatever, you name them. I've seen he's been using these arguments for years, and I've watched so many debates. I'm a debate addict. I've never actually seen a good rebuttal. It's 2021, and there still hasn't been good rebuttals to these age limiters. I know that was long-winded. Go ahead, brothers.
No, that's true. A spiral galaxy is another good evidence too, because the inside spins at a different rate. And so if deep time was true, then the spiral galaxy would be a blended mess. So that puts a definitive limit, a youthful limit on how old at least a spiral galaxy is. And there's a lot of them. Erosion rates, you know, the moon is moving away from the sun, or from the earth. And so in the past, it would have been closer. And then there's a problem, too, because at some point, the Earth's gravitational pull would pull the moon into the Earth. So how did that exactly happen? It affects the tides and the winds. So it would have made the environment here on Earth too hostile for life. So they don't have all of this time.
Okay, so supposedly in 2020, our planet was spinning faster than normal. And what I find very interesting is they're claiming that the weather made it spin faster. This is in USA Today. I'm reading this right now. It's from like I don't really know if I can buy into that. You telling me the weather made the planet spin faster?
Well,
really? Like how does it make it spin faster? I really want to know this. Like, this does not really make any sense to me. What's it pushing against that causes a faster rotation?
Mount Everest.
Yeah. It's like what they say to the moon, the fact that it's moving away from us more and more every year. That's not a problem with an Earth or a universe that's 6,000 years. But if you believe in these billions of years, that's a problem. It's going to cause huge problems with the tide, as Sam was talking about, or the fact that the sun would have been a lot larger billions of years ago, and the effects of that and the gravitational pull, it would be enormous. But with the recession of the moon, they look to, as you guys know, the ejection theory, where the moon was actually part of the Earth at one point. I mean, with absolutely, and that theory has been absolutely demolished. But I mean, to say that young Earth creationists apparently are anti-science, but then you have all of these types of fairy tale ideas just to explain away, you know, the clear day. It's even difficult in one debate to choose, you know, because there's literally 100 to 200 scientific indicators that say the Earth can't be more than, you know, whatever, to 10,000 years. It's hard to choose in just a 2-hour debate. You know, which ones do I want to utilize? Because there's so many. You could have 100 debates and never use the same line of evidence. There's just that many. And I haven't seen a good response from them. Okay,
so I'm reading this their article right now about like how long will How much longer will the Earth's core spin? I'm trying to find it real quick.
Well, haven't they? So they have established that the Earth did spin faster in the past, right? And isn't that why we have a leap year? Isn't that connected somehow?
Maybe.
I think so.
Yeah, they were saying that because it's slow, that you can't obviously count milliseconds. You can't change your watch all the time. So what they do is they wait a whole year, or they wait a while, and then they have the leap year. That way they can accumulate the loss of time for the slower acceleration of the Earth's rotation.
Okay, so get this. Get this. So these guys are claiming that it will take up to 91 billion years for the Earth's core to cool, but the sun's gonna burn out in 5 billion. I don't know if I buy that. Sorry for interrupting there.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to last that long.
No interruptions. Basically, well, think about if the sun is shrinking. This is based on magnetism, right? So the magnet is stronger than the sun's core is collapsing. So if a sun's core is collapsing, the heat builds up and it expands. So if it's shrinking, that means the magnetism is greater than the expansion. So if we see it, what Smokey was saying was that, well, because it's not shrinking at a constant rate, we can't use it as a good measurement of time. Well, okay, we don't have to have it be constant when we can just say it is shrinking. Therefore, we know one thing is a fact. Magnetism might fluctuate, right? So there might be, just like on Earth, there might be times where there's more magnetism or less, but it doesn't matter because magnetism is still getting weaker. And the weaker it gets, the smaller the sun is going to shrink, because the magnetism itself is changing, but not at enough of a rate. So, for example, when we look at the Earth, the magnetism is based on the Coriolis effect, right? So we see the magnetism decaying really, really fast. But at the sun, we see the magnetism and we see how strong it is, and it outweighs the power of the energy produced by the sun. So the sun is shrinking based on how strong the magnetism is, but its power of magnetism isn't being lost as fast as the Earth. So pretty unique. It's pretty an interesting argument. It falls away because both of them show a clear decay rate happening. Both of them are, the Earth is rotation is slowing down, magnetism is getting weaker, and then we look at the sun and its energy is getting weaker and its magnetism is staying pretty good, enough for the sun to be shrinking. So pretty bad signs for evolution, considering everywhere we look, we see rapid decay of the planets or stars. It really doesn't matter. I don't think Smokey took that into consideration when he brought that up, because it's not very good evidence, you know. That's stellar evolution. Then he talked about, like, if you have a dog and a cat and you go backwards in time, do you believe in a common ancestor? Like for the dog and cat, I thought that was strange, because Ken obviously would never believe such a thing, and we don't either. Speciation has its limits, and we have genetic boundaries. So don't really know where he was going with that one.
Well, I think some of that stems from just not really understanding the underlying arguments, and some of the bigger picture knowledge that's now starting to come into the equation, as we all know from reading stuff on a daily basis, right? Like the starting to recognize the obvious barriers that you were just referring to, like they're starting to be quantified, right? Like we're recognized. It's beginning to be admitted, not necessarily in a direct fashion, but starting to be recognized. Like, oh, there seems to be these evolutionary buffers, and like, oh wait, this little portion of the genome seems to be able to have mutation and variation, but this other portion, or like the majority of it, is extremely rigid. Like, come on, if that's the case, then how are you actually, with any kind of plausibility, are you making these cases of like the crossovers and such,
Yeah. Well, I would think that most of those things are outside of Smokey's expertise. That's why he really wanted to focus on, if Kent would say something along the lines of, your version of God is different than mine. So Smokey would jump in and say, so I'm not saved then. So he wanted to get him off the science, really, which is odd to me because he would also ask a question during his short, brief time period on like, so you believe there was death before the fall? Explain that. Explain it scientifically. Why you think that way? Or carnivory. You believe that all animals went from herbivore to carnivore, but so you believe in evolution. It's like, just stay away from the evolution if that's not your topic, man. I would have avoided it if I were him. Didn't make much sense to antagonize Kent, who loves the young Earth creation science the most. But
well, I don't know. I do. I think this was one of Smokey's better debates, to be honest. Like, I think Kent won, but I think overall this is one of Smokey's better debates. I mean, from like being a debater standpoint, it was pretty kosher, back and forth, good dialogue, and wasn't a dumpster fire. To put it that way.
Yeah, well, good. I didn't see any problem with the debate. Went good. He was ready, came prepared, threw the questions at Kent that even Kent said, I don't know. I don't think any of us know, and we probably won't know. So that's good. If your goal is to make your opponent not have an answer, he did good a couple times then. He really got Kent on some things that I would have wanted to answer, which I will probably do after I show the debate again tomorrow on this channel. I'm noticing people in the chat said they missed it. So yeah, for you guys, I'm going to play that debate again tomorrow here. And if you don't want to wait, you can go to Standing for Truth channel, and it was just live on there. Ended about an hour ago. Where did Smokey learn to debate? Cooking school? No, that's where he learned to drive. I've noticed old Earth creation. I'm just clicking around. I wasn't paying much attention to chat, so my bad, everybody.
So Caleb says you're only saying that because he didn't act like a D, LPP. He knew better. Well,
yeah, he was very respectful.
Yeah,
I thought for sure. Yeah.
Stated clearly, is mad at us. I don't know. I don't pay any attention. I'm busy making videos.
Yeah, he's got his response video, and then on endogenous retroviruses, and then I don't know if they saw this, but Speed of Pudding and his crew, they've been all whining about it. I think they talked about it today.
Oh, yeah, well, what else do they have to talk about, right? Besides drama.
Well, look, John Perry is just so amazing. I mean, if you see his videos, his animation, it's just fantastic. Do you guys know how to do that? Anybody know how to do that? It's amazing. I mean, he just really showed Stanley and Matman.
Because of visuals? Wow. Okay.
Well, that plus the content, of course. I mean, the content was amazing.
What's funny about John Perry is Matt and I did an extremely extensive rebuttal to his video. I think it almost went 3 hours, Matt? And he took 2 questions out of it and then ran with it in 2 videos. And as always, failed to answer the question that we've been asking for years, to show us empirical evidence, even in a technical paper, where we have non-functional endogenous retroviruses going from non-functional to functional. Because it's not just a little bit functional like they try and say. I mean, John, these transposable elements are essential for healthy life processes in the cell. I want to see empirical evidence for that. So it's just so funny that John Perry picked out a couple, maybe total of 2 minutes, Matt, of our 3-hour response. And then that was it. He thinks he proved a point for some reason.
Wow, embarrassing.
So guys, listen. There's a endogenous retrovirus in chimps and humans in the same place. It has the exact same mutation. So I'm gonna need you guys to step up your game and explain that. Okay.
That's like saying, I can't believe it. I drove my truck yesterday and I got a nail in the tire. That same thing happened to my car. So crazy. It must be related. They have to be.
Well, here's the other thing. If you're operating from the assumption that there must have been a common ancestor versus it already being there, and you're claiming, they both have the same mutation. Okay, how do you know that? Like, not that it has the same sequence, and supposedly a mutation that caused the sequence. how do you know that it's a mutation at all versus that's how it is?
Let
I
me.
mean,
Well, I was gonna just say. I mean, and I might get this wrong, but I mean, so humans and animals were created only a day apart. So if those sequences for those viruses were created at the same time, then for the same purpose, and if they mutate at the same rate, then why would we be surprised if we found those sequences, those mutated retroviruses in a chimp and in a human? Does that make sense?
say that one more time.
So humans and chimps were created one day apart, right? And so if these retroviral sequences were created for a purpose, and if that same purpose, that same sequence was created in the chimp and in the human from creation, and they mutate at the same rate, then why would we be surprised to find those matching up?
Right, exactly. And there's obviously going to be places in the genome that are weaker than others. So when mutations happen, they happen in specific regions. For example, we know that the mitochondria has a fast mutation rate. Then you look in the mitochondria and you find specific genes have faster rates than other, and even different fragments like the D loop has different ranges even inside of it. So once you look in the D loop and you look at the hypervariable region 1 and 2, even those have different mutation rates. So of course we're going to find more mutations in one region than another, and some of them, that just means that that region is weaker and it's not as conserved as the other. So we should expect when something breaks for it to break in regions that are not as important. That's why it's not conserved as much. It just makes logical sense. But like you said, I don't know why they don't look at it from that perspective, because if they did, then they would have to yield that that's a possibility, and they don't want to do that. That's all.
All right.
Well, John Perry was trying, because he tried to answer my question in the second video, because my question was, if all of these transposable elements really are just useless junk, because they'll just say a few of them have co-opted function, right, with no evidence. That's the question I really wanted an answer to. Show me this co-option in real time. Well, it takes too long. Well, my question was, if all of these ALU sequences, all of these various classes of retrotransposons, if they really are just the ancient remnants of past viral infections, nothing more than evolutionary leftovers, why has the cell even bothered with them? Why hasn't natural selection removed them over time? And essentially his argument was they do. It just takes too long. It just takes millions of years. I mean, answering the question in a circular manner, well, it just takes too long, assuming their deep time and assuming universal common ancestry. And that's just the transposable elements, because he went on a rant. And Matt, what we'll do in the next month, because we've got like a billion projects to do, but I've added it to the list, we will do a word by word response. So this is just kind of in a nutshell. But he totally missed the fact that they are the ones, okay, the dodgeball Dans of the world, the deplatform man Dan himself, they're the ones that say the vast majority of the genome is junk, right? They'll say, well, maybe 10, 20% max functionality. So we're not just talking about ERVs. Okay, we're talking about all of the junk sequences that they say exist. No, natural selection should have rid so much of that out. So he was just taking this little tiny piece of the pie, thinking he was answering something, failing to recognize you guys are the ones that say the vast majority of genetic sequences are junk. Why is that the case? Why are they conserved? Why are they carried along by natural selection? It's because, as we know, Matt, from the design diversity starting point, we predict function. So of course selection is going to keep it around. That's the more parsimonious answer. Yeah, go ahead. I apologize.
No, you're good, man. The other thing that one of the things that's now known beyond all doubt and is being actively studied as we speak, and has only been being actively studied for the last couple of years because we didn't have the technology in order to enable us to even conduct it, is the unavoidable reality that gene expression varies dramatically by cell type. And up until recently, we were mostly examining cells, specific types of cells in vitro versus in vivo, right? And it's like, so we weren't seeing even though it was known that the gene expressions have variations in those scenarios, right? We also know now, because we have technology, that the gene expression varies dramatically by cell type. So what are the odds, ladies and gentlemen, that we're just now starting to dive into the hundreds of different cell types just in the human body, for example? What are the odds? There's all sorts of things that we thought didn't do anything that do something, and only do something in very hyper-specific scenarios. Therefore, if we're not observing it in that specific scenario, we're going to claim it doesn't do anything. Oh, it seems that the research continues to support the position that, oh wait, most of this stuff does turn out to do something. We just don't know what it is yet.
Right.
And I think the reason I bring that up is in the context of there's a similar endogenous retrovirus, both in humans and chimps. It doesn't seem to do anything. Therefore, it must be a vestigial sequence coming from a common ancestor and proof of evolution. It's like, what are the odds that we might end up finding a specific function for it? I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it's very high. And given the fact that we focused the vast majority of our research on less than 3% of the genome for the past 50 years and maybe a decade of scratching the surface on the remaining 97%, I'm going to go out on a limb and just gamble that we're going to find that out. I yield.
And we're the ones that are confident enough to make those predictions. How many debates have we been in, or discussions, all of us, where it's like they make all these assumptions? No, the vast majority of DNA is junk, or whatever, you name it, molecular clock data, or Jensen's wrong. But yet we challenge them to make predictions. Well, and I've asked this question hundreds of times, how much of the genome do you predict is then functional? Let's go 100 years into the future. What do you predict? Let's put it on paper. That's the gold standard of science. Oh, I can't put a number on it. I don't know. But that's the point, is they are admitting that their answer is non-scientific. And it's just pseudoscience, because we often point out that if you just picture the developmental stages, right? Embryological development, all the sequence of events that take place, all these different developmental windows, the epigenetic factors involved, changing a single-celled egg to a complex organism, okay, where John is pointing out there are hundreds of different cell types and different organs, all in the right places. And here's the thing. The programming for this has to be somewhere. And what we're finding out is a lot of this programming is in the so-called junk areas. So they'll knock out a sequence, or they'll do something, in a living organism and say, see, this has no function, when they're missing the whole point that it was functional in the developmental stages. And these are like the types of predictions that creationists are putting out. So these arguments from ERVs, junk DNA, pseudogenes, whatever, you name it, it's outdated. And it fails to realize that we're finding more and more, as John is saying, function every single day. In my second debate with Erica, I said, how many cell types did they test in the ENCODE project? She didn't know. I said, how many genetic sequences have they knocked out in the mouse genome? She said she didn't know. That's a major question you should know, because there are so many cell types they did not test. And they've also haven't done genetic knockout tests on humans, of course. That'd be unethical. So all of these arguments based on ERVs and junk DNA, here's the last thing I'll say, is it's premature. And they can't make predictions either, because they know they're going to make a prediction and then they're going to have egg on their face, as they always do. I yield.
How similar is the genome between the mouse and the human? Oh, 80%. Oh, what is that being measured? Oh, that's coding genes. Oh, okay, cool. What's the similarity if you look at the entirety of the genome? Oh, 9%. Oh, really? Interesting. I do say, ladies and gentlemen, that is rather intriguing. If it's only 9% similar in totality, and if there is even 50% functionality, that's a very staggering difference. And I'm sorry, if that is true, then your phylogenetic trees, in terms of universal common ancestry, are a joke, and you can go burn them and wipe your proverbial you-know-what with them. is all I have to say. But we've been all being verbose, and Landon, I think, finally got his microphone working. How you doing, Landon?
Yeah, I finally got it working. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Landon, good to see
Okay.
you, brother. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I was my phone died when I joined in, and then while I was charging that, I got on the computer, put my headset on, and then I couldn't hear anybody. So now I'm back on my phone. I don't know what was going on.
Well, brother, we're happy to have you. I want to hear your review of the debate. And I love when you're in the live chats, brother. You do a great job moderating as well in the live chat. I want to say one thing before you give your review. We got a keyboard warrior in the live chat. Put it up on screen, Matt, if you can. LaserFan17 says, ERVs having certain functions doesn't mean they're not direct evidence of common ancestry. So, again, for the 200th time, which Team Dodgeball has admitted they can't provide. RJ Downard admitted, even though it's been 8 months since our last debate, he can't provide. Show us how these functions pertaining to determining cell types, okay, or functional in cell stress responses, functional in embryological development, functional in the immune system. Show me empirical evidence of a non-functional retrotransposon or ALU sequence, which is actually these ALU sequences are functional in the brain. Okay, show me a non-functional whatever going from non-functional to functional, because they still don't get it. Notice LaserFan says, doesn't mean it's not direct evidence of common ancestry. Yes, it is, because here's our prediction from the design hypothesis is function, because ultimately these are created units of DNA function. So then we would predict they are functional, but they would predict non-function because they say these are all the ancient remnants of past viral infections or evolutionary leftovers or genomic fossils. So yes, actually showing function disproves their position. So let's see if LaserFan can provide that. Maybe link us a paper of a non-functional ERV going from non-functional to functional in, let's say, determining cell type. So we'll wait. We'll wait. See if he can provide that. Anyways, Landon, brother, good to see you. And what's going on?
Nothing much. I just been busy with my channel. I've been doing some videos on my channel, and I decided, I saw the thumbnail for that debate, and I was like, this is gonna be really good. So I watched the whole thing and I really thought that both of them did a good job. I think that, they both gave their all, but it just seems like, I used to be an old Earth creationist, and I didn't do this intentionally, but there is a lot of compromising, and you add a lot to the biblical narrative, to get to try to back up your position when you're old Earth creationist or theistic evolutionist. And one of the areas where I think like Kent really got smoky was the problem of death before the fall, and I didn't really think Smokey had much of an answer for that. I think that's a problem for them, and I think that I don't know. I think there's a lot of compromising that goes on, whether it's intentional or unintentional. But I think that Kent won, but I do think that both of them really gave their all, and I enjoy listening to both of them speak. So
I agree. I just overall, like John was saying, it was just overall a really good debate. I mean, I found myself just really focusing on the conversation and the points and the questions, and it was just a very sophisticated, intelligent discussion. It wasn't so. It didn't turn into a dumpster fire. It was just a really intelligent discussion and overall a great debate. Because sometimes it's not a lot of fun when you've got, let's say, Kent versus some evolutionist or atheist who really just doesn't know anything, didn't come prepared, just gets totally demolished, which happens a lot of the times. Yeah, it's fun in a way, but at the same time, a debate like tonight, where they're really going back and forth in such a good way, where Smokey goes for a couple minutes, then Kent goes, and Smokey goes, and great questions and lots of different topics. So I just overall just a great debate.
yeah, I really like Kent's approach. He really he's very straight to the point with everything, you know, and to an extent, you know, Smokey is too, and they were very respectful and cordial, and you know, it was just really nice to have a debate that didn't, you know, that they didn't start shouting at each other or anything like that. You know, they, you know, both made their points and had a nice conversation. It was just enjoyable. It's enjoyable to listen to debates like that. You know, it's like on your channel, you know, thank God it's not like, you know, how it used to be like on the non sequitur channel where the creationists or Christians would always just get interrupted and
Right,
you know,
exactly.
slammed by even the moderators would be, you know, biased. And thank God, you know, for SFT, that's not the case. You know, everybody gets their, you know, fair shot at things.
Well, that's my, you know, that was my goal, even starting the channel. I mean, 3-4 years ago, I'm not sure, you know, and me and Matt have pretty much been working together since the beginning. But I noticed that. I mean, your debate channels were what? Atheist run, like non sequitur show. And Kent, he just got back into the game, and he was being contacted, of course, because he's the evolutionist nemesis, right? And he was doing a ton of debates, and it was just so poorly moderated. It would turn into like a 3-on-1, right? It would be the moderators, like Steve McRae would be debating him as well. And the debates just weren't very professional. Both sides weren't given the opportunity to make their case. So that was my goal, especially to moderate debates, is moderate them in a way that is professional, gives both debaters the opportunity to make their case. And I really like to see this. I love the support that we're getting. The last 2 weeks, you know, we've had 2 big debates, 250 people there enjoying it. And both debates were a ton of fun. Kenny Rhodes and Smokey Saint both. So yeah, I've always loved Kent's approach. I've always thought he's a top-notch debater, and I really respect Kent for the fact that he never turns down a challenge. I mean, who hasn't Kent debated? I mean, today was his 250th debate. I really wish, and I think most of us agree, it would be nice if a lot of the big organizations too were so willing to engage in debates and dialogue with the critics. And it's just such an important time. And with these platforms where you can do an online debate and get 250 people in the live chat, why not? You know, the days of having to do all this work and set up a debate in a university and you get a couple hundred people there, you can just do it from the comfort of your own home. So yeah, go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last Answers in Genesis debate that I remember was the Ken Ham and Bill Nye thing that they had. And they had like a follow-up debate after that where Bill Nye visited the Ark encounter. But I mean, it would be very helpful to the whole cause if, you know, these big organizations started having, you know, debates online on YouTube or whatever. I mean, it's very easy to set it up.
Yeah.
Well, what's sad though at this point, in my opinion, is I've watched a lot of those debates, and just to be blunt, I haven't been all that impressed. I mean, it's like, okay, we have better debates. Like, we have more substantive arguments, and they're more like, let's rock and roll and get down to the brass tacks and,
right,
you know, pull off the kid gloves and rock and roll and like have a throwdown.
Come into debate to debate. I mean,
like when I enter a debate, I'm in it mano a mano, or, you know, against a woman, I guess, and in it to annihilate them.
Amen.
Like, that is my objective if they're my enemy. Right now, like tonight's debate between Kent and Smokey, it's not like enemy to enemy, right? Like, it's, you know, two brothers in Christ having some differences of opinion. Hey, we're gonna debate it. Like, okay, that's totally different. But when we're going up against the
Bill Nye.
Yeah, like Bill Nye, man, like Ken Ham was way too nice to Bill Nye.
Oh, way too nice.
That guy is there. Bill Nye was nothing but a sarcastic, snarky little bastard that entire debate, and just trying to, you know, act like every argument was dumb. And the irony is,
he's always been like that.
Well, I agree, but I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
he didn't have substance in his arguments.
Yeah.
He spewed a bunch of talking points, and I almost guarantee you that just like the vast majority of the people we deal with on YouTube, if Ken Ham had fought, had punched back harder and like tried to get him to force him to back up his claims, I guarantee you Bill Nye would just been like all the people that we deal with. But I'm not an expert in that, so I don't know. Like, we know that was what would have happened.
Oh, big time.
And then for all the world and the millions of people that have watched that, they would have been forced to deal with the reality that Bill Nye and the majority of the little people he's representing have got nothing beyond their talking points. That's it.
Amen. Amen. And that's why you got to have these discussion in a formal debate. Any debate I do, John, you're the same. I always want at least a 30-minute discussion in the middle of your openings, your rebuttals, because that's where, John, as you're pointing out, that's where you corner your opponent. That's where you ask them the right questions. That's where you expose their talking points. And as far as I remember, the Bill Nye versus Ken Ham debate, I could be wrong, but I think it was just like an opening statement, a rebuttal, and then like almost right into the Q&A. It's just, it's not enough time, or there's no opportunity to kind of expose Bill Nye. And here's the thing. You can come in like the prophets did. Tell it like it is. You can be adamant in your points. You can be aggressive. That's you can come in aggressive in a debate. You can come in a debate like Ben Shapiro. Matt, he always points out, listen, when you come into a debate, I mean, you're coming in to just decimate your opponent's position. Not necessarily the opponent, but his arguments. That's the whole point of a debate. And if you're just going to come in and throw flowers at your debate opponent, I mean, maybe you just shouldn't be doing debate. So, yeah, go ahead, guys.
So Laser Fan is doing usual talking points. He says viruses don't have any predisposed function other than replicating themselves through living organisms. The way they regulate ecosystems is usually like killing organisms. Okay, that the deadly viruses are outliers, not the commonality, bro.
Exactly.
Like, this is being researched, and they're finding more and more examples of this every turn. The majority of the ones that have been focused on up until relatively recently were the deadly pathogens, which usually are ones that have either damage to them, which has made them deadly, or there has been a jump between species. And bat viruses, anyone? Anyway, they're just fine in the bat. They're not fine in the human. Like, it's not that complicated, dude. They're like doing something for the bat. They're not doing something positive. Well, they're doing something in the human, but it's not positive. Like, this is not exactly that complicated to comprehend. I mean,
right.
Well, I guess it is if you're brainwashed and you only focus on like the little insert from freaking Wikipedia, but
Well, when I debated Mark Drysdale, all about it. LPP, you debated him too. His first argument in the discussion portion was, why did God create bad viruses? Why are there bad viruses? And you just made a great point. And correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. We have more viruses and we have more bacteria in and on our cells than we do cells. And we have 100 trillion cells or more. Okay. And guess what? The majority of viruses and bacteria are good. They're healthy. You wouldn't want to live on a planet or a world without viruses and bacteria. So as you pointed out, John, the bad viruses, okay, they are an outlier. They are typically the result of what happens when a virus jumps from its original domain or its original host into a foreign host. And then, it burns hot and fast, and it can lead to the bad symptoms, and you can have an outbreak and stuff. But the bigger picture is viruses are good. Bacteria are good. And we're not denying the viral characteristics, I guess I could say, about ERVs. We're actually pointing out that viruses are good. Viruses are evidence for design. So these arguments that Laser Fan is putting forth it's very disappointing, because we still haven't seen or gotten an answer to the question of this co-option. I mean, he just passes it off like it's nothing. Oh yeah, ERVs, they're functional in determining cell types. I mean, John, I could share a screen right now and show you 20 different papers. They got no answer. I mean, it's really sad for, unfortunately, the evolutionist side. And I will say though, with going back to the Ken Ham versus Bill Nye, Ken Ham, I still think did a great job, you know, and I think he did a great job in the second debate. So they actually had a second debate where they walked through the arc for a couple hours, where they actually got to dialogue. And I think Ken Ham did good in terms of asking Bill Nye the right questions and answering Bill Nye's objections. So here's the last thing I'll say, because I've watched so many debates recently with like Michael Shermer, Christopher Hitchens. Okay. Then you got obviously Bill Nye, Richard Dawkins. These top dogs of atheism, they're worthless. I'm going to be honest. The guys we debate here on YouTube have better arguments than these popular atheists. I mean, I rewatched the Shermer versus Hovind debate and the Shermer versus Frank Turek debate. Shermer had nothing, brought nothing. Christopher Hitchens brought nothing. I mean, these are weak arguments. Go ahead, brother.
Well, earlier today, I mean, I watched the William Lane Craig versus Anthony Flew debate. And now, in fairness, Anthony Flew, he was getting up in years, you know, so he probably wasn't in his prime. And William Lane Craig was in his prime. I mean, I don't think he was more than 40. I mean, but it was utter annihilation. I mean, just complete and utter decimation. However, and in fairness to Anthony Flew, he was the guy who came up with a lot of the arguments that are still being used by atheists on YouTube today. So it's like, well, yes, it seems outdated and weak, but it was, 20 years ago, and the Evo atheists on YouTube are still using a lot of his foundational arguments. Of course, irony of ironies, Anthony Phage ended up becoming a deist, and then was leaning towards theism when he finally passed away. But he formally rejected atheism, which is ironic, right? But they're still using his talking points, even though the guy that came up with them ended up rejecting him later on in life. But that it was interesting that William Lane Craig kept calling him out and being like, you're not actually countering or providing an argument in your responses. You're just making emotional pleas and complaints about how you don't like God, or you would do something different, or why would God do it like this, versus actually coming up with substantive arguments about why he doesn't exist or why I'm wrong. And it seems to me we just see that over and over and over again in so many of these discourses.
Yes, basically, Anthony Flew, I think, is the main reason atheists now keep repeating, "Oh, I don't have a belief; I have a lack of belief," and all of that nonsense. And
he originally came up with the whole lack theism concept.
Yeah, because I don't really remember seeing that as much when I first started discussing things with atheists, but now it's just like they always go to that. It's like that way that they can say whatever they want to say without having to give any evidence of their own or make their own case. They can just do all this attacking and all from behind a wall of them just saying, "Oh, I don't have a belief, I got a lack of belief."
Well, what's kind of funny about that with Anthony Flew is he came up with the whole lack theism thing earlier in his career, then realized, and then well before he became a deist and an atheist, he realized, okay, this is dumb. Rejected his own lack theism concept, shifted to being a positive claim atheist, and then you fast forward 25, 30 years from there, and then Hitchens and the Four Horsemen, I think it was Dennett, kind of redug up Anthony Flew's lack theism premise from the 60s or whatever, and then tried to and brought it back to life, even though Anthony Flew had rejected it well before even rejecting atheism, which kind of puts the context and the irony of that into perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like these atheists, like, that I've talked with, like, it's like no matter what you say, no matter what kind of arguments you give, they just stick with the, I have a lack of belief, even though, we'll explain, why that's not true. And it's like they still go with this old, buried argument, like you said, that they just dug up, and they just won't let go of it. And I think that they don't let go of it because it makes it easier for them to attack us and critique us without having to make their own case, make their own arguments. And I actually did a video about that not too long ago. It was an atheist critique video, and that was one of the critiques, or part of the critique was about the non-belief thing. And Basically, I got the comment section, like the atheists were angry, saying, no, we're just rejecting the BS of theism or something like that. And it's like they just ignored all that I said, basically.
Well, what's interesting about that is I won't allow that because there's no such thing as a neutral position, right? So they want you to present evidence or justification for your belief, but they also have taken a position against God, and their position cannot be justified. They cannot provide evidence of, they cannot, I guess, they cannot provide evidence or a coherent explanation of how they came to the conclusion that God doesn't exist based on the same criteria that they would require us to prove that God does exist, right? So it's inconsistent. In other words, their worldview has not been justified. They have no rational explanation for their atheism. They'll say, prove to me God exists. Well, as soon as they say prove God exists, that means that they have already presupposed that God doesn't exist, right? Well, how did you come to the conclusion that God doesn't exist? And that's where I will push back on them and say, well, you've taken a position against God. Can you give me a rational explanation for your position? So I won't allow that. There's no such thing as neutral ground with God. And if you think about it, right, God walked with Adam, and God gave us prophets, gave us his word, divine intervention all throughout history. So how do I know that God exists? Because he revealed himself to us, right? Through Adam, through the prophets, through his word. So how do you come to the conclusion now that God doesn't exist? Can you justify that? And they can't do it. It's all emotional. They've got no scientific argument, and they don't have a philosophical argument. So, I mean, they're bankrupt, and that's why they try to push this lacktheism position. But even that's not rational. And they just want to play games.
Well, in line with what you're saying there, Sam, one of the things I'd love to do is like, the whole, the I don't know aspect that you're referring to. They somehow claim that shatters the does God exist or does God not exist dichotomy. And what always fascinates me about that is you can refuse to answer the question, but that doesn't mean that it changes from being a binary answer. Like,
right.
Just because you don't want to admit that you have to answer the question, or you refuse to answer the question, doesn't change that the question is exists. There's only two possible answers. I mean, like, to me, that's like, yeah. So are you not using your brain right now? Because you'd be laughed out of the room in any other context if you made the same claim.
It just proves that their position of atheism is not rational.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about how you're saying it's not rational, and this is kind of relates to the discussion. But there was one of my friends on Facebook. He had posted a thing from it's a poll that the Atheist Experience YouTube channel did, and it said, like, if God existed, would you still worship him? And it was like 86% said no, even if even if they believe in God, they still wouldn't worship him. So obviously there's more at play here than them just saying, oh, I have a lack of belief or there's not enough evidence. I mean, because a lot of them seem to just actively despise God. It's not just an evidence thing. They try to make it seem like that, but obviously there's more to it than that. If you talk to some of these atheists, there are emotional reasons for why they don't believe.
Yeah, it's only emotional, and it's funny when they suggest that you should provide evidence, and that's what I say. Like, can you provide the same evidence that you would require me to provide? Can you provide that same evidence to prove that God doesn't exist? And what do you mean by evidence? Because from a naturalistic worldview, like we don't believe that God is made of like matter that he can be tested in a laboratory. Right? And in that same way, how have you justified your atheistic worldview? How have you proven that? Right?
Well, a lot of times they won't answer that.
Well, they won't answer it, but I'll point that out anyway. right? Just to show that their position is not rational. At least, they can say that it's rational, but it's not. Their position has not been justified, and it can't be justified.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm saying, like, I mentioned this so many times on Facebook. I said, like, what is the point of all these atheist channels if they just have a non-belief or lack of belief? I mean, their whole channel is based on a non-existent belief. So if that's what they're saying and that's what they're going to go by, then by default, their whole channel is just ridiculous, because that would be like someone, basing, if you base a whole channel and all this websites and all on a supposedly non-existent belief, then it just is ludicrous. I mean, it's almost like, I just don't get it. They need to just stop saying that and just argue like they need to argue.
Yeah, it's cognitive dissonance, right? They're saying they don't believe in God, but their actions don't follow. And in the same way where you would ask, would you also spend this much time refuting the tooth fairy or Santa Claus? And they say, no, that would be crazy, because it would be crazy if they, right? But in the same way, they'll turn around and they'll try to refute God. But if you just categorized God as fictional as the tooth fairy and Santa Claus, then why is it different?
Okay, so hey, Matt, pull up Laser Fan's latest comment. He says, and yes, I heard everything you said. It's still not a dichotomy, because there isn't just belief in one God. It's either there's a God, or there's no God, or there's something else. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so
wow. And this guy wants us to listen to him about freaking viruses when he just did exactly what I was talking about. Or there's something else is the same as I don't know, or I don't believe.
Right.
Like, it doesn't change the fact that either God exists or God does not exist. If it's something else, then that means that God doesn't exist. So the original dichotomy is correct. It's something else is the answer to God does not exist. Holy crap, these people are morons. Excuse my French. I yield.
Well, it's anything but God. They'll be willing to believe in anything but God. Even aliens, it doesn't matter.
And now he says I worded that wrong. Yeah, no, you didn't, buddy. No, you didn't. You're a freaking atheist, and you're a moron, because
look at the chat.
You can't comprehend extraordinarily basic stuff, and are desperate. I mean, or there's something else. You claimed it wasn't a dichotomy, and now you're claiming you misworded it when I called you out for being an idiot. Yeah, sure.
Does he want to join? Is there a link? And he can come and defend his atheism, and he can give me a rational explanation.
I think Matt would have to let him in.
I already posted it in live chat.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, well, maybe he'll come in and be the first one to present me with an argument for their atheism. Tell me how they disproved God somehow
He
in a
only found
laboratory.
this because he was commenting on a video that I made debunking R and Raw. So that's where that's his guru, probably. So
hey, well, according to R and Raw, there are no necessary assumptions for science.
Right. Even though
I still haven't gotten over that convo he had with the Muslim philosophers, where he kept asserting there was no presuppositions in science whatsoever, and then they just like annihilated him, and he finally was like, oh yeah, I guess there are. And then fast forward 30 minutes, no, there's not, there's nothing. It's like, bro, like everything ultimately at some point requires a brute fact presupposition. Like that's an unavoidable reality.
Well, even a brute fact is a mute fact, right? Because a brute fact can be disproven. A brute fact isn't based on anything. So that's just as hollow but that's just a hollow platform.
Aaron wrong.
Well, see, I knew that whenever Matt was making that debunking video of him, I knew that the atheists were going to come out of the woodwork, because it's like whenever you criticize him or any of the other people that they follow almost religiously, it's like they just go nuts, and it's just crazy. I mean, I predicted. I mean, that's just how it seems to be every time, you know, someone makes a video critiquing like a notable atheist. It's just like, I mean, can you guys take a little criticism without going ballistic here?
Apparently on something that they lack belief in. So they don't even take a position. They're just lacking belief. I'm trying to give them a reason to believe, and they're saying, no, you're wrong. Well, okay.
Right. Well, that proves my point that there is no such thing as a neutral ground.
Yeah.
No, there's not. What's up, Wesley? Welcome to it, man. So I heard that you're in recovery from being a Matt Dillahunty groupie.
Oh, what? No.
I'm messing with you, man.
Oh, okay.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
No problem, man.
So I know you were at the debate. What are your you want to share your thoughts on it before we go back into our tangent on atheists?
Well, you know, it's so funny. I was just commenting on a video from like 7 years ago with all the same arguments that Smokey was bringing up. Just debunking them one by one, just in a comment. So yeah, he's didn't really bring anything new in my opinion, but I don't know. What are your thoughts?
But I think overall, like I said, I think it was a good one. I mean, Smokey brought I mean, he tried to bring his A game. The reality is, folks, this is where I stand on it, is a lot of these things, it's been being debated for a while. Mm-hmm. And what I find extraordinarily interesting is there seems to be fewer and fewer new supporting elements for old Earth, theistic evolution, etc. And there's more things that keep popping up in favor of whether it be younger or some kind of alternative, right? And theirs are getting weaker, and other, things on our side are getting stronger. It's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, I think it's just an echo chamber, and they're repeating the same arguments because they think that they've already won when they haven't heard any rebuttals from them, or they're not listening.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Smokey did good, but I don't really think he brought a whole lot of anything new to the table. I mean, it was kind of
I think he did good. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there's just only so much you can do with in terms of making arguments for old Earth creation or theistic evolution before, it's you kind of run out of rope. That seems to be how it just seems to be that way, based on what I've heard from how the arguments I've heard from people,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I used to be an old Earth creationist, and I guess I can see though why, they would rely on some of the arguments that they think are really solid, and continually rely on, the same, things. And I mean, I still kind of have a habit of doing that, but I mean, I think after a while it goes to show that, maybe they don't have as much as they think they do, to make their case, when they're having to reuse all this, over and over. I mean, what do you think about that?
Oh, me?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with everything you said, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, what were we talking about? The atheist thing. Have you dealt with, I'm sure you've dealt with atheists saying, we have a lack of belief and all that. I'm sure that we've all gone through that.
Yeah.
Hey, so guys, if you haven't seen this, I strongly recommend everybody check out the so Otangelo Grasso's channel, The God Talk. Yesterday was a priceless interaction. Okay, so Otangelo is epic at bringing crazy people from Discord servers over to his channel, and yesterday was no exception. It was priceless. But it won't. Your point on like the lack of belief, all these different things. This guy, I kid you not, he goes, "I'm an apatheist, agnostic, atheist. I reject God." That's a quote unquote. So he is a apatheist, which for those you don't know means he doesn't care. Okay, but then he says an agnostic, and then he's like, "No, I'm actually an atheist who rejects God."
Yeah,
it's like, well, bro,
I don't even know what that means.
If you're an apatheist, That means
It's
you haven't.
ridiculous.
You don't care to such the extreme that you whatever. Agnostic means you don't know, and then you said you're an atheist, and then you confirm that you're an atheist by saying that you reject God. So that means you are by default neither an apatheist nor an agnostic. You are an atheist. And it's like these guys don't even, I mean, so many of these folks don't even comprehend what they're arguing. And then just like this laser fan dweeb in side chat, he was making the assertions that like, I don't believe God exists, therefore it has no relevance, and therefore he does not exist. And it's like, hey, what? So you're claiming that because you've decided something doesn't exist, that means it doesn't exist? Okay. And Ben, I'm serious, folks. You should check this out. It's pretty funny. Then he goes on this whole tangent about how, I'm just calm. I am complete. Okay, why? Gravity. What?
You really said that?
Okay.
I kid you not. Yeah, man. I swing a hammer and I'm driving home and I'm sitting in my car and gravity is pulling me and I'm complete. And we're just like, what? Gravity? You're complete because of gravity. What causes gravity? It doesn't matter. I'm complete because of gravity. And we're like, it was mind blowing. But this is the kind of stuff that is really starting to come out of the woodwork and really, I think put on full display the sheer level of just incoherence that is what atheism has turned into.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
one thing I was thinking is, I don't know if you guys agree with this, but I was thinking like, they'll say, nowadays they say, well, I'm an agnostic atheist or something like that, or, this relates to the lack of belief thing. And one of the things in my critique video, I was saying, well, if the modern concept of atheism being like a lack of knowledge, lack of belief, if that's identical to agnosticism, then atheism is redundant because it's just another term for agnosticism. Because they're trying to, eat their cake and have it too, it seems like. And what he said with the guy saying that he, about the gravity, makes him complete. I've been thinking about this lately. A lot of creationists I've heard, say they compare, the naturalistic account of things and evolution and all that, to paganism and like a worship of nature. And that does seem to heavily mirror like paganism because it's like they're worshiping the creation. They've created their own little naturalistic type religion around it.
Right. Well, everyone worships something,
Yeah, I mean, it's like, basically, I remember what someone had said something, a comment I saw, I don't remember where I saw it, but they're saying that basically, well, it was a video somebody had made about evolution, and somebody had said, basically atheists have turned, like abiogenesis and evolution into like their Genesis account.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they defend it religiously,
Yeah.
and it's like, and it basically is just, I can see what people say when they say that, it does seem like a type of paganism or some kind, type
Sure.
of nature worship.
Yeah, I don't know how you can possibly go down the rabbit hole that is origin of life research. Truly, open your mind to what is required for even the most simplistic of their arguments. Or not arguments of supposed evidence. Like, it all boils down to, somehow this happened. That's what every piece of it. We admit that it is extraordinarily implausible that this could happen, but we know it must have happened in the way that we're claiming that it happened. And in that context being with no intelligent agency being necessary, no external influence being required. And they cling to that with sheer desperation, especially, and I think that grasp is becoming even more and more necessary The sheer desperation. They got white knuckles because, like, the more they discover, like, it doesn't. They're not getting closer. They're getting further away.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, but on the flip side, all we hear, at least on YouTube, is all these people running around. No, they're getting closer. They're getting way closer. Like, no, they've or all the way to the extreme of they've already created synthetic life. And it's like, no, they have not. They can't even get a polypeptide to form. Like, go away. You are making so much crap. Like, they haven't gotten more than 20 nucleotides to bond. Oh, wait, but somehow 80 of them, it happened to form a one small component ribosome of a ribosome. And we still can't account for how the genetic code and the sequence would have formed, but hey, yeah, that's what happened. I mean, it just gets more and more extremely ridiculous by the day. And then, but the double down of it being proven, and every time there's some new book that comes out by an Origin of Life researcher like Nick Lane or Jeremy England's two most recent ones that I've read, and if you read the books, those guys they're putting forth hypotheticals and what their ideas are, but they freely state that none of it's been proven. It's complete conjecture and does not account for the extreme complexity that we observe. But then if you listen to the people that spew those names on YouTube, they claim that those guys have the answers. And it's like, did you read their book? Have you read their papers? Because they stated the exact opposite of what you're claiming. Anyway, I yield.
Well, I think it's just desperation. They want to be able to, show, oh yeah, God wasn't involved, but they're, like you said, they're not getting closer. They're not even getting close to getting closer, and they keep, saying like that we got it all figured out. You have these atheists that they act like, the way they talk, you would think that like they just created like all kinds of different life in a lab, with ease. Not even the smartest people in the world can make a cell, replicate a cell. No one can do that because, we're not God. And you see, one thing I've noticed is that, I've come across two types of atheists when I'm discussing abiogenesis. You have the one group like you're talking about, they think that, or they try to pretend, that they've all got it figured out, and we know that, and they know that everything's happened naturalistically, and all that nonsense. And then you have some that do say, well, we just don't know. Like that guy debated early last year, Speed of Sound. He debated Standing for Truth. I think he kind of took that position that he just didn't know. But a lot of them do have this fantasy land where they think that it's just all been solved, or it's about to be solved, and it's just it's not even close.
What was the debate about? I don't know if I could be here.
What's that?
Danny, your mic, it doesn't sound. It sounds like something's wrong.
Sounds bad.
Yeah. And it's really quiet also.
Yeah, you sound really far away.
Are you guys talking to me?
Oh no, Danny, the guy who just joined.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully he can get it fixed.
Is this any better or no?
Not a whole lot
Maybe a little
better.
bit better.
Sorry about that. But if this is not any better, I'll just kind of bow out of the conversation.
Yeah, it's are you on your phone or something?
Yeah, I am. I usually am not, but StreamYard is just kind of bad for mobile.
Yeah, sometimes it can be. I've had some issues with it.
Have you?
And it's still coming through the same. Have you check the settings, and it may have turned down your mic volume inside of StreamYard. I've had that issue when I've been on my phone. I've been on my phone quite a bit lately, and been having that issue.
Any better? I just messed with the sounds.
It's louder.
Yeah,
There's
louder.
there's like some background noise, but you definitely came through with more volume.
Okay. What was the debate about? Was it you and was it SFT and who else?
No, it was Kent Hovind versus Smokey Saint.
Oh, okay.
They were debating the age of the Earth.
How did it go?
I think we were all talking about it. I think it's been it was a really good debate overall. They had good back and forth. It was pretty calm overall, and just pretty good dialogue. Between the two of them.
Oh, nice. A calm debate with Smokey and Hovind. That's interesting.
Yeah, we all believe in miracles now, 100%. Like Danny,
good.
your atheism should be, if you need to go watch the debate, because you will no longer be able to be an atheist after Smokey Saint and Ken Hovind did not degenerate into a dumpster fire. We know that God exists.
Atheists, yeah.
No way around it. God exists. Smokey Saint did not have a dumpster fire.
Hopefully they'll have a round 2 debate, because I'd look forward to seeing that. I think they hinted at wanting to have a second debate, so hopefully that'll happen.
Well, at the end of the debates, everybody says that. It's talking.
Yeah.
I'd love to have round 2. Yeah, for sure. Unless although one of the funniest ones of that actually became real was, I think this was the first set of debates that Smokey and I did together, and it turned into 3 rounds. And our opponent, we had just absolutely annihilated our opponents, and they were like begging for round 2. I mean, I'm talking getting emails, all this kind of stuff. We accepted, annihilated them in round 2. They begged and begged and begged for round 3. We did round 3, crushed them again. I literally made one of them cry, and I mean, I don't mean figuratively. I mean, I literally made him cry.
Oh, wow.
And then after all that, they claimed that they won.
Of course.
Of course.
It's like, bro, you were crying. I made you cry. You don't get to claim that you won when you cried. I mean, like, come on. I made you cry.
What was the debate about?
Well, there's some slight variations. It's basically like, does God exist?
Okay.
And
Wow.
It got pretty good. It was 3 separate debates. I mean, one of the guy was calling himself Rib. He's changed his name now, but it was that stood for religion is bovine scatology, like BS.
Yeah.
And then Michael, the Canadian atheist, who, it's so funny, CJ has had some combos with him lately, and Michael likes to act like he's like Mr. Super Nice Guy, and that Christians are just mean, and if anybody gives him grief, like, see, you guys are just so rude and so mean, just attack people and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, dude, you were coming after us hardcore in the debates, and then now you try, like with other folks, you try to act like super holier than thou. It cracks me up.
I noticed that.
And your partner, his name was Religion is Bullshit. Which one of us is the jerk? I'm just saying.
Yeah, check the comment section on that debate on MDD. You'll figure out real quick which camp is out of line.
Oh, for sure. And is this laser fan guy going to come in? And
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
I was waiting for that.
I don't know. Is he still in the chat?
yeah, he's still talking trash.
Is the link still in there?
Yeah, I mean, I just posted it again. I posted it at him. I mean, I don't know. I guess he's one of those side chat big talkers.
No.
I'd never heard of him before. I'd never seen him comment on anything. I guess Matt said he came from because of the R and Raw debunking video. I guess that's how he found this channel.
Well, if he's an R and Raw fan, we all know that you must be brainwashed.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it just seems like this has happened. I've noticed it numerous times. Like when he's criticized, I mean, they act like someone just like blasphemed their God, basically. And it's like, it's just a little bit ridiculous. I mean, have some thicker skin. I mean, that's just my view on it.
Well, here's the thing with a lot of these guys, they want to dish it out, but they can't take it. And if they operate from this whole like, and this is why one of my big issues with a lot of these like super soft types that and I'm talking about on our side of the equation, that just bend over and like let them just run all over them. And it's like, it wouldn't be Christ-like if I didn't just let them, beat my face in. It's like, okay. But then these folks like the Aaron Ross and such, it's like they want to dish it out, but if you don't respond to them in that kind of fashion, then it's the worst thing ever. You're super duper mean. How could you possibly be a Christian, etc., etc. And then all of their little minions follow along with, "You're not a Christian because you didn't just accept what we said. Like, you questioned my intelligence." Well, yeah, you're acting like an idiot. So yes, I am. What's your point? You have no substance to your argument. I countered it, crushed it, presented an alternative, or a counterexample as to why my logic is more correct. Then you run around and be like, "Well, I don't understand what you're saying," or "I'm not an expert in XYZ, therefore even though I tell you you don't know what you're talking about, I just admitted I don't know what you're talking about. But you must be wrong. And if you claim that I'm the one that's wrong, then you're mean." I mean, that kind of stuff makes no sense. It's just, yeah.
Well, it's just like I guess they expect, if you're Christian, you're just supposed to not argue back or be assertive at all. I mean, is that what they're thinking? Because, I mean, that's not the case.
Well, I mean, no, well, yeah, but they also apply that same logic to people like Danny. So, like, Danny's an atheist, but he comes into some of their streams and, like, goes off on them when they're making stupid arguments. And then they turn on Danny, and he's, like, the worst thing ever. He's like a pseudo-Christian in their minds. He's a pseudo-theist, even though he's an atheist, just because he doesn't want them to make dumb arguments.
I don't know if Danny's fully an atheist, though, because he says that he doesn't, I guess, totally rule out a divine being or entity of some sorts, right? So that wouldn't fall within the atheist framework.
Go ahead, Danny. You want to respond?
I know that he's made that comment to me before.
Well, yeah, I mean, Danny's problem is that he's a dualist in a certain fashion,
Okay,
and he realizes... Yeah, go ahead, Danny. We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Certain renditions of God, like a God that is not omniscient, a God that can fail. I'm sort of like not even considered those sorts of entities, but if you're talking about
You're
Danny,
roboting.
Yeah,
You're cutting
robot
off a lot.
That's cutting in and cutting out a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, Danny recognizes that there's the dualism problem, and if I remember understanding you correctly, Danny, your biggest issue is with the problem of evil, isn't that right?
Yes, but Danny has not mentioned. Danny has not mentioned, with all the times that he's brought up the problem of evil, that Alvin Plantinga's free will argument refutes the problem of evil, and they say that the majority of philosophers, it is established that the problem of evil does not rule out God, because you cannot have free creatures in a world with free will. You would expect that one of them would at least do one thing wrong, and as soon as that free creature does that one thing wrong, what's that?
I hope I can be heard. I hope I'm not breaking out. But I have a question. Do you think God has free will?
Yeah, but if you define free will as not free will, then you have an argument. But if you define free will coherently, then you have to allow that at least free creatures have to have the ability to do at least one thing wrong. And if they do that one thing wrong, then you have the problem of evil. But I actually would like to define evil in a way and I'd like to get your take on it. You see, so I would define evil as not a thing in the same way that goodness is a thing. Like light is a thing, darkness is not the opposite of light. Darkness is the absence of light. So I would say that evil or badness exists in a void that is created when people do things in the wrong way. In other words, God gave us his commandments, and when we disregard those commandments, a void is created where evil can exist. How would you respond to that? You're roboting again.
I wonder if it's an internet issue or some kind of connection problem.
Dan, do you want to try to join again? See if that solves it?
I'm betting that Danny is out in the middle of BFE, Louisiana right now.
Yeah, but it's got to be at like midnight where he's at.
Am I right, Danny? Are you in BFE, Louisiana?
I'm in the middle of. I'm near Amarillo.
Oh, I know where that is. Hey, there's a steakhouse in Amarillo. There's a big, huge yellow steakhouse in Amarillo. You got to go there. It's like the only one. It's huge.
Okay, I'll look at it tomorrow. I'm staying the night at Amarillo, but I'll be sure to look at it. Yeah, I'm just coming back from Colorado. I've been on vacation, but it seems like y'all can hear me now, right?
What? You're still breaking up, but that steakhouse is a big, huge yellow building, and it's really cool when you go inside. And if you can eat, I think they're 96 pounds. You have to sign a waiver, so if you eat too much food and you die on the floor, they're not responsible, but your meal will be free.
Hey, Danny, you say you're coming back from Colorado, or you're going to Colorado? Danny, did you say you're going to Colorado, or you're going back from Colorado?
I'm coming back. I'm going back.
Okay, gotcha. So you're going back to Louisiana?
Yeah, I'm going back to
Gotcha.
Louisiana, right?
Yeah, for Amarillo, you got a good. You still got a good freaking 8 hours probably left in this trip.
Yeah, I'm gonna spend the night in Amarillo.
Yeah, it's like a George Strait song, Amarillo by morning. Did you
Amarillo
come from San Antone?
Yeah, it's funny how people who have been to Texas, other than like flying through Houston or Dallas, like don't realize how freaking big Texas is.
Oh gosh, yeah, it is.
I haven't been there yet, but the biggest state I've been to so far is California. I went there in May to see my fiance. She's planning on coming out where I am. I'm in Georgia, so I flew over Texas, but I want to actually go to Texas and see it one day.
Well,
Texas
where
is awesome.
Danny is, it's kind of like the middle of nowhere. It's just flat, just totally flat. In fact, I drove through there. It was raining, and you could see the water. It's almost like it's interesting.
He's due north of Lubbock, Texas. I've driven through Amarillo a few times. Yeah, one of my sisters lived in. Actually, my parents, before I was born, my parents lived in San Antonio. But then one of my sisters lived in. My brother-in-law's a geophysicist, finds oil. So they did like the Houston, Dallas, Houston. Then they were in New Orleans, then Oklahoma, then back to Dallas. It's crazy. Over the last 25 years, I've been all over the place for the oil biz. But Texas is a beast. Just driving, like, I've driven the Houston to Dallas trip a few times, and then Dallas to San Antone, the good old San Antone. It's quite the trek.
Yeah,
I mean, for me, go ahead.
I was just gonna say West Texas isn't at least up on the 40 or through Amarillo. There's not a whole lot out there. It's just flat, no trees.
Just the ranches and oil fields.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, it feels like it takes forever for me to, go from where I am to go to Atlanta. But then I can imagine how long it would feel, to go from one end of Texas to the other, or be in California and go from the north end or from the top to the bottom. So Georgia seems big, I guess, but I know Texas. I can imagine how long those drives could be.
I'm just gonna guess off the top of my head that Texas, square mileage wise, is probably 4 times as big as, maybe 5 times as big as Georgia. Let's see. Let me Google that.
Maybe.
Yeah, it probably takes about 18 hours to drive across California from bottom to top or top to bottom. Because I think San Francisco is about 10 hours from the Mexico border, and San Francisco is, I think, just over halfway. So that's a long drive.
Yeah.
But even driving from across California from east to west, that's a long drive too. That takes a good 5 hours, 4 hours.
Man, I'm good. So not to be arrogant or anything, but yeah, it's 4.5 times as big.
Nice.
So the square miles of Texas is 268,597. Square miles of Georgia, 49,425.
Did you know? Here's a fun fact: Texas is about I think it's 99% privately owned.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I might have heard that at some point before.
Yeah, and then when you go west, like you get the federal governments and the state governments. They own big pieces of land, state parks. I think New Mexico is the least private owned of all the states. So it's the government owns most of New Mexico.
That would explain so many of the dumb things coming out of the governor of New Mexico this past couple of years.
and I think Arizona's pretty close to that same also, and Nevada. Yeah, most of that land's owned by the BLM.
Well, and the BLM has been like, for lack of a better word, seizing. They've been just oh yeah, we own this, and like taking control of state-owned land, and be like, oh no, it's ours now.
Well, it's interesting how they acquire it, because they're not really supposed to own it. So for example, they built a big solar farm in California, and so the deal was, for every acre that they developed, they had to purchase 2 acres and donate it to the BLM, or else they couldn't build the solar farm. So this solar farm was massive. It was like hundreds and hundreds of acres. I think it's a couple square miles. And so for each, for each acre that they wanted to develop, they had to purchase an additional 2 acres and donate it to the BLM.
Yeah, I've been reading some reports on that. Like BLM's been doing some serious moves, either like that or in some cases just straight up being like, "Hey, states, this isn't yours anymore. It's ours now. We're managing it." And It's like, okay. So, sidebar. We talk about the eras of the 1800s and such, people going out there and the pioneers and such, and getting the land grants and whatnot. Why did that stop? Like with all of the pontification and talking points about like home ownership, land ownership, how it's discriminatory, so on and so forth. Which let's get real. There's massive disparities. Why are we not still doing that with the ridiculous amount of acreage that is available? Like, why don't we let people go out and have a stake a claim, like we used to?
Well, they should, because then they can tax them, which no one likes to do, but it is revenue. Whether you agree with it or not, the government's losing money on every acre that they own. They're not making money.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, why would we stop doing this? And I mean, you don't think that we could that investors would put up money to help with the development if people wanted to go out and do it? Of course they would. Sure. Like, that's how the country was built. Like people went out there and stuck their claims and started to do development. And then money from more developed regions would come in, and the train was built and it would come through the little town. I mean, like all that kind of stuff. Like, that's not exactly. It's not like this requires some new type of conceptualization or logic to have to be developed to how this is done. Like, it's been being done for a long, long time, and give an opportunity for people to become landowners again. But I think that would enable people to have more freedom, and that's why it's prevented.
Right.
I think so.
I mean, I haven't gotten a couple days ago, guys. I heard these people going off on a tangent about how you have more authority and more political power if you're a renter than a landowner. And I'm just sitting there like, what the heck am I hearing? And how did people manage? Like, how can you be this dumb to be? And these people were like college professors. And I'm just like, in what universe do you have more power as the renter than the landowner? That has never existed, ever.
Yeah, I don't know where they're getting that from.
They're communists. I mean, actual communists. They were proposing that communism was better. But one of the justifications of why communism is better is because as a renter, you have more power than a landowner.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is not how things have worked in communist countries. I'm sorry. People lived in shitholes that they didn't own and were not fixed. And then if they ever didn't obey, they got kicked out of the crappy apartment they lived in. I mean, has anybody ever been to Eastern Europe?
Yeah, I was reading this thing on Venezuela a few days ago. I forget what it was. It wasn't related to that, but they were showing some of these pictures of these areas that were I think at one time Venezuela was one of the third most wealthy and profitable countries in the world. I believe it was up there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, they had one of the highest per capita incomes.
Yeah, and so and everything changed over, and now everything is so run down. People can't afford to fix their buildings, and all these structures are just dilapidated. And I'm sure there is still some wealthy areas and people in that country, but overall, it's sad.
Well, at this point, people are starving there. It's not just living in a crappy house anymore. Now it's like they're literally starving.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you look at America, where we have, the poor people in this country. The government provides very well for them. They're overweight, and they've got their phones, and they get their checks, and they complain that the taxpayer or the government doesn't do enough for them. And it's just hard. Nothing's free. The government doesn't pay for anything. It's the taxpayers. The taxpayers pay for everything.
I may have to modify one of the things I've kind of founded my life on. So I tell people this, like, the only thing I learned, one of the only things of merit I learned in college was my freshman year, day one of microeconomics 101. And the professor was like, doing the usual intro, and he's like, okay, now I know a whole bunch of you aren't going to show up very often the rest of the semester. So if you don't learn anything else, pay attention, because what I'm about to tell you is the most important thing I'm going to say this entire semester. And my little arrogant self was like, okay, and I kind of popped up and started listening. And he says, so everything we're talking about in economics and all this is about how wealth is created, managed, destroyed, and capitalized and such. He's like, now ultimately what this boils down to is there's three ways to become wealthy. You can trade your time for money, you can trade other people's time for money, you can build something other people will trade their time and money for. Now, each one of those has a cap based on your skill sets, demand, everything of what you can make. But ultimately, that's the only three ways that you can create wealth. And and he goes, well, there's one other way. You can inherit money. But the person you're inheriting it from made it in one of those three ways. So there's really only three ways you can become wealthy. And that really stuck with me of like, okay. So there's no way around the fact that the vast, vast majority of people in modern society strictly trade their time for money. The wage model and your education experience, et cetera, is what creates the cap on how much people will pay for your time. You can build a company or a service and hire people, and you're going to trade their time for money. And then you can ultimately usually do a hybrid of trading some people's time for money to build something that other people will trade their money for. And I think those concepts have been blurred heavily, or it's not even really taught to people in the modern era. But then I have my own kind of fourth way in terms of what's happening in modern society, which is, well, you're not going to become wealthy, but we'll pay you to not do anything, in the context of, the welfare state that we're now observing explode before our very eyes.
Yeah, I saw where California, I think, is trying to do the universal basic income thing, which is one of the reasons why my fiance is wanting to get out of that state. She's had it with all the communist garbage over there. It's like people just think that they should just be handed money, for nothing. And it's not free money either. And like, it seems like some people don't grasp that, like where you hear like Bernie Sanders say like, oh, it's tuition free. It's the money's coming from somewhere. It's not like they're just creating it out of thin air.
Well, well, you're right. But the problem is that right now with the central banks and everything, they are creating money out of thin air. I mean, it's like,
sadly,
well, let's do some quantitative easing, and like, what do you guys think today? How much should we print in digital? In the digital register, like how much should we print today? Oh, I don't know. Let's let's do 100 billion today. No big deal. I mean, and this has been going on since the Great Recession. I mean, like when they were doing like $1 trillion a quarter there for a little bit in quantitative easing during the Great Recession, and then they're back doing it again. Not quite to that extent, but pretty hardcore. I mean, it's just like, this is beyond ridiculous. We're printing so much money and then being like, no. The inflation that everybody's experiencing, that's going to be temporary. That is BS. Like, everybody knows with fiat currency, the only way you can possibly stymie hyperinflation is to spike the interest rates. They've been holding their interest rates at zero, and in Europe, negative interest rates, in order to continue to perpetuate this, just print money at will crap that they're doing. But at some point, the devil comes home to roost, or comes seeking his due. And in my opinion, one of the reasons for all the craziness going on right now is they know that the devil now wants his due, and they're trying to figure out a way to deal with all of their stupidity for the last like 40 years, 50 years, but especially this past 15 years, where it's just gone completely insane.
Yeah, war. That's the solution. Our new president's going to launch us into World War III.
Well, if you noticed a couple days ago, Japan issued a formal statement that China, Russia, North Korea were basically preparing for World War III.
Yeah, I was just reading one of these Tavakistan or someone like that, one of these stand companies in the Middle East. They amassed the largest army ever in their history of their country. And I guess China told Japan that they are probably going to nuke them first, which is not supposed to do. And I believe Russia told the U.S. that if we send any missiles their way, Russia's going to just assume that they're nuclear and respond accordingly. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that are, we're moving our armies over that way. I guess we pulled a lot of our military out of the Middle East, and we're moving them over towards China now.
Well, and the other big thing that's not getting much publicity is the fact that India and China are already in conflict.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of getting glossed over, that they're having fatalities at their border. And it's like, at some point, I mean, can you imagine if China and India went to war? You're talking about, that's what, 1.4 billion versus 1.3 billion?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just nuts. And they're next door to each other, not even like an extenuated geographic deal. I mean, it's like, that's freaking nuts. And they're both nuclear powers. I mean, good gravy. I mean, the level of death could just, I mean, if either one of those countries started nuking the other one, I mean, good grief. You're talking hundreds of millions of people dying, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Especially if they start responding with nuclear.
Well, heck, even without nuclear, I mean, one thing a lot of Americans especially forget, I think Europeans too, but Americans especially, like we think like LA, oh, it's so big. LA is like what, like 12 million or something like that, but it's spread out over several like 1,000 square miles, right? The China's like regions like Beijing and Shanghai, like their metro regions, there's 150 million people in an area the size of LA.
Yeah.
And like we think that 12 million, and I'm not saying that LA doesn't have a crap load of people and isn't like have issues. I'm just saying, like, for everybody who lives in LA, imagine dropping another 100 million on top, like people living there in that same surface area. It's nuts, right? Same thing with a lot of the cities in India. It's like, oh, it's geographically, it's 300 square miles, but there's 40 million people there. It's crazy.
Has anyone else heard anything about the border conflict with India and China? I know it's been a while since I've heard anything about it.
The last thing I'd heard was that there was armed conflict. There was like multiple fatalities on both sides, and then it just kind of gotten glossed over. But they've been like shooting at each other ever since. But basically, nobody's declaring war. But when the skirmishes happen, they just kind of do their thing, and then I guess soldiers die, and then they act like it didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's the case. They haven't covering that
much. Somebody talking, I'm hearing like a really faint voice.
Yeah,
I am too.
It's what?
I heard somebody talking about it was like super duper faint. Was that you, Landon?
I don't know. Have I been talking like that the whole time, or did that just happen? It might have been me, or it might have.
You've been coming in loud and clear the whole time.
Okay, I don't know if it was. I'm not sure what happened. It could have been. It could have been me, but I don't know what happened. Maybe it was a connection problem. Who knows?
Maybe someone's watching I Love Lucy in the background or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh yeah, but what I was saying was, I don't know. I kind of suspect that maybe the media hasn't covered the India-China thing as much because of China's influence on the U.S. media. That's one theory I have, but China, they're in it to win. They want to dominate. And they place people everywhere. That's just their thing. They're wanting to rule and dominate as much as they can. And it's just one thing. It's just sad that you don't have as many people speaking out against them. Especially with all the atrocities that they've committed and continue to commit. So, but like I said, I think that there's a reason maybe a lot of China's actions don't get discussed very much.
No, that's very true. I mean, it's obvious that our media is bought and paid for by people on all sides of the equation. Man, the news, I mean, I take it all with a grain of salt these days. Like, well, you seem not totally full of crap. I guess I'll take like 50% confidence. Okay. In many cases, 0% confidence when I know they're spewing talking points.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a lot of the time I'm just like, any of the headlines I see, I'm kind of skeptical. I know that at the end of the day, it's not, or a lot of the time, sadly, journalism is no longer about, reporting the truth, investigating, and bringing stuff to light. A lot of these stations and channels and companies, they have agendas, and sometimes they're very obvious, and it's like I don't know, it's just like something you would expect to see in a movie, like with how crazy and corrupt and biased the media has become. It's really sad.
Yeah, nobody wants to actually have true dialogue anymore. It's all propaganda and manipulation of their pawns and the appropriate pieces to their own end objectives, gambling on the fact that most people don't even pay attention to what's going on and just accept the talking points, or act like there's nothing they can do about it, or say, well, I don't like it, but hey, they're paying me, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut,
Yeah, it's sad, and it's just, because it really, this is a time, the current time, we really need people that are going to actually, tell the truth and report what's going on and be honest. But sadly, those types of entities are becoming, harder to come by, and it's really just gotten sad, because I remember, the media's been biased, for a lot of my life, but it just seems like, especially after, 2015, 2016, where Trump, came in, they just started going nuts. It was just like blatantly, there was agendas, excuse me. And it's just like, they don't really even try to hide it anymore. And it's just, so I don't really watch a whole lot of news now, because I just don't really care to have people, lying to me.
No, that's totally understandable. Totally understandable. Well, boys, it is getting late for me, and I gotta get up in the morning, so I'm gonna bow out. Hope everybody had a good time. Appreciate everybody. Y'all continue to have fun.
Yeah, actually, LPP, before you go, I have a bit of a non sequitur question for you.
Okay, what's up?
I've just been looking at, and I was wondering if you could name, just off the top of your head, any like modern creationist geomorphologists.
Creationist geomorphologist. I don't know. Would Dr. McQueen fall into that, Matt?
Probably. He seems experienced in a little bit of every aspect of geology. So,
okay.
Having been in it with so long, I would imagine that he's at least studied it.
Yeah. Okay. So, Dr.
Yeah, are you're subscribed to Standing for Truth's channel?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, next time Professor McQueen is on, just ask your questions in chat and just direct them right to Standing for, question for Standing for Truth, and that way he'll get highlighted, and then ask your whatever questions you have, and they'll answer them right there for you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, bye, LPP.
See you guys. No
Yeah,
problem.
good night, John. I'm actually going to bow out too. I got to get up early in the morning. But good stream, guys.
Yeah.
Nice talking to you.
Take care.
Yeah. I'm actually, I think I'm going to also, so God
Yeah,
bless
I was going to
everyone.
say the same thing.
Okay, we all did.
I'm about ready to call it a night.
Yeah.
This was a last minute, spur of the moment kind of stream. So I hope everyone enjoys that's watching. And for those that don't know, Praise is live right now. I'll put a link over to his channel for those that want to go over there. He's making fun of these mega preachers throwing their money around. So it's kind of fun. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. I'm going to be premiering the Kent debate with Smokey that happened, and then going over all of the arguments afterwards.
Nice.
That's what we were going to do tonight, but I wanted my audience to watch it all first. So till tomorrow.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.